And good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to Going nuCLEar, full-blown coverage of the land. We are presented by Buzz Sports CLE. I'm Ethan Greenberg, and I'm here with my co-host, Madison Delaney. You can follow me on Twitter at egreen4325. You can follow Madison on Twitter at madtravels24. You can follow the show on Twitter at Going nuCLEar CLE. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your comments during the show. So we just got the news this evening that Donovan Mitchell was voted as an Eastern Conference All-Star, and you and I were just talking about his health and the fact that the game is in fact in Utah this season. So the question would be, will he or will he not play if he's not 100%? What will the Cavs have to – what will their input be on that?
Yeah, I'm sure that they will have an opinion, even if he is trending in a positive direction, or even if he's maybe able to play before it sounds like he'll be out for at least a couple games. So I'm, in general, you don't want to risk it. And he's probably the type of person who also doesn't want to risk it because he's been there, done that. He knows there's bigger goals at hand. So he probably maybe would also consider not doing it. But the fact that it's in Utah, I think you put a little bit of weight with that, that he may want to play in front of those fans again.
Right. And I guess the conundrum is this: if he does decide to play, and he can't give it a full go, is that not robbing somebody else of an opportunity to play in the All-Star game? Obviously there is a bit of pride, a bit of, something to be congratulated on, to be voted on by the fans as a starter in the Eastern Conference. But I guess you got to kind of put the team, or in my opinion, you put the team ahead of self. And you say, hey, look, I got to be healthy for the stretch run here. We are nearing the All-Star break. And, one thing that kind of came to mind, we've talked about this, we've chatted about the coaching situation, JB Bickerstaff. 1 minute, as I said, you need to talk me off the ledge because, being a Cleveland fan and seeing teams struggle when you imagine that they shouldn't struggle, you often want to say, look, it's time there needs to be a different voice in there. And I guess I say that based upon the same mistakes being made consistently. I was looking up a stat. One of them that we talked about is the opponent's 3-point field goal percentage. Even though right now the Cavs are number one in points against per game in the league, 107.2. They are 27th in the league when it comes to opponents' field goal percent, 3-point field goal percentage. Only Toronto, Indiana, and San Antonio are worse than the Cavs when it comes to that. And, when you let a team like New York the other night take you down. Now, I got to give some respect to New York because right now they are battling in Boston. They're tied in the third quarter, and Tom Thibodeau hasn't playing well, so I shouldn't take anything away from them. But I guess the point being is we're at about the same record this season as we were last season going into the All-Star break. Yet we have more talent this year. Now, again, I understand injuries, but how much leash do we give JB Bickerstaff?
I don't think he's even near a hot seat, in my personal opinion. I don't think even remotely sniffing it. I think he's at least a year away. If they failed to make the playoffs this year, then maybe we have a conversation in the offseason that you're going into next year on the hot seat. But right now, I don't have any concerns about JB and the job he's doing. I think he's tinkering with lineups a bit right now. You've had guys out and they're coming back healthy. This is without Mitchell, obviously, but with everybody else back, it's like the healthiest we've been all season pretty much. And you can go 10 guys deep because we've obviously been forced to play some of those guys, and they've done fairly well in those roles where you should give them some spot minutes from time to time. And so he's trying to figure out how to make that work. I think Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. One of the big lineups that comes to mind is when we didn't have Garland or Mitchell on the floor, I think, in the New York game in the first half. We did not do that again in the second half because it didn't work out. And so I don't really feel like he doesn't, like, he's not making adjustments or things like that. For the most part, I think he is. And I think he's still got the group behind him just because they've had so many double-digit comebacks. I think he's able to rally the crew when he needs to. We want to get away from the slow starts, but that seems to be a theme that we just can't shake.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's troubling. I guess that's one thing that's troubling to me is the slow starts and being coming out flat and methodical and falling behind. The loss over the on Friday to a depleted Golden State team was really, really deflating.
Yeah.
From an effort perspective, the fact that you didn't take it seriously enough and you let Jordan freaking Poole just kill you. And then you get a win against Milwaukee. All right, that's good. But they were without their best player. But so you got to take care of business. Hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But then to lose the game at New York, and that was a tough one. Obviously, I think the fact that you let Julius Randle kill you from beyond the 3-point arc is not acceptable.
Yeah. A lot of those contested with the hand in his face. I mean, he had some open looks, and I think the one that hurt me the most personally was the one towards just towards the end of the fourth quarter, I think, where Jared Allen stepped off to help. And he was on Randall. And like at that point, you have to know, like, you cannot, he's hit enough from that standpoint that you don't help off of him. And like, that's the one that was disappointing. For the most part, I thought we did a pretty good job of getting hand in his face. He hit shots. And like, sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Right. And well, what you and I have talked about, and I think, and Danny Cunningham, who covers the Cavs for ESPN Cleveland,
Mm-hmm.
wrote a great piece on the Cavs and the defense and kind of analyzed the 3-point shooting defensive woes. And I think you hit on this too. Sometimes guys are lucky. Sometimes guys are just hitting clutch shots, and sometimes guys get on a roll early. They see the ball go through the hoop,
Mm-hmm.
and they're feeling confident. And so you really got to shut that down. Now, something that I just heard during the halftime on TNT. I heard Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley talking. Now you got those guys. I mean, Barkley comes from a different age of basketball where
Right.
you are playing bruiser ball, and there are
Right.
no easy layups. There were Jordan rules. There were the bad boys of Detroit. And he said, "You want to know why scoring is up? You've got all these little guys that all they do is shoot threes, and shooters." And he said shooters don't play defense. And then Kenny Smith added, "Well, look, there's also no threat of shot blockers in there." And so maybe that speaks to why the Cavs are first in defense in points against. We have shot
Mm-hmm.
blockers in
Yeah.
Allen and Mobley. I'd love to see them bulk up a little bit without getting too bulky, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But the age of the game and how things have changed vastly over the past 20 to 30 years is just amazing. Where we've gone to all the big post guys, in the mid 80s when you had the Elijah Wans and the Patrick Ewings and David Robinsons of the world. And just
Yeah.
it's really crazy how all that has changed. So, I will say, we've got some time here. Obviously, the Cavs are fighting right now to get into the top four. And this question has been asked, so I think it's fair to pose this to you. What would your idea of a successful season be in the end? Would it be the Cavs hosting a series? Would it be the Cavs making the playoffs and winning a series? Where do you fall on that timeline or for what it's worth?
Yeah. I do think with Mitchell, you have to avoid the play-in by any stretch. Like, I don't want to be hosting a play-in game and then win and you're in. Like, I don't even want to do that. I just want to be in. I don't want to have to deal with the stress of the play-in game, even though they learned a bit last year, I think, having played in the play-in. But, ideally you win a series at least. But I mean, the East is really, really tough, and it's going to depend on where all those matchups lie. And who finishes where and what you're looking at first round. I think whether you can say like you need a first round for it to be a success, depending on the opponent, it could be like taking it 6 or 7 is kind of a moral victory because you're still way ahead of schedule for what you should be. I didn't realize like today's Okoro and Garland's birthday, and they're 22 and 23, and you're like, oh wow, okay. Yeah, we have time. So, obviously you want to win when you can. And they have the pieces, and when they're focused, they certainly can. Like in the fourth quarter, when they're dialed in, like they could, if they played with that level of intensity throughout, you're looking at a team that could compete for a championship. I don't know if this is the year. I don't think it is. But they should at least be getting out of the first round, in my opinion.
Okay, and taking a look at that, as you mentioned, you don't want to be in a play-in. So right now we're in the 5th spot. Okay,
Yeah, we're flirting
and
with it.
we're flirting with it. We got a 2-game lead over the Heat, and we've got the Heat coming to town in the next couple of weeks here, maybe next week in a homestand. So it's going to be really important to take care of business at home, and it's going to be especially important tonight and tomorrow night to take care of business. We've got tonight at Houston right now. I don't want to jinx anything right now. We've got things under control. So you hope to be able to close that out against like the worst team in the NBA. And
Yeah.
then you've got the Thunder, and the Thunder are not much better. They've obviously been hit with the injury bug before the season even started, losing their number 1 pick, Chet Holmgren.
Yeah.
So you really have to take advantage of these couple of games. You got to improve. I mean, to be 20-5 at home and then 9-15 on the road, that's not impressive. But I think that if you can win 60% of your ball games, I'd say that'd be a pretty successful season. So you get above 50 wins is what I
Yeah.
was thinking at the beginning of the season. I thought there's no way they would be less than 50, considering what we brought back from last season and what we added with Mitchell. So
Mhm.
we shall see how that goes. The thing that troubles me is right now in the 4 seed, so the 4-5 seed is Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And if Brooklyn is healthy, Kevin Durant is an assassin.
Yeah.
And so for that matter, so is Kyrie. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Kyrie hit arguably the biggest shot in Cleveland sports history in the 2016 finals. So that's going to be difficult to prevail over Brooklyn. But that being said, let's say for argument's sake, we were only able to get to the 4 seed or we stayed at the 5 seed. Right now, Boston, now they've lost a couple, and Philadelphia is picking up steam right now. But let's just say Boston holds on to the 1 seed. Would you be scared of Boston in the second round, given the matchups we've had with them so far this season, very early on?
Yeah, I don't know if scared, like I wouldn't say that I'd be scared of them, but I wouldn't say like just because we've beaten them in every game we've played them so far that like it's an easy pickup for us. Cause like I think it'll be a battle. I mean, obviously we've had some battles with them already. And it feels to me like a series that would go 7, probably, just the nature of how the two teams play. So yeah, I wouldn't say scared. I would respect the matchup, I guess, is maybe how I would put it.
Yeah, I think that's a good word to use. That's be very respectable. I mean, I question Boston. They're doing a fantastic job there from the coach down, and they get the most out of their guys. The fact that they made it to the finals last year, and they took Golden State to 6 games, if I remember correctly. I mean, that was pretty impressive what they did. As much I saw a commercial advertising the NBA and talking about Jason Tatum. And I'm sorry, they are elevating this guy way too soon. He's got more to prove to be put in the conversation that they were the adjectives that they were giving this guy. That was bothersome to me.
Yeah.
And And then you look and let's say Philadelphia chases down Boston for whatever reason. Harden in the playoffs, that
Yeah.
guy is not consistent.
Well,
I
Doc is the one I don't trust in the playoffs.
yeah, he's done it with multiple teams for over a
Yeah.
course of time. He won one championship in Boston with
Yeah, I
the
think
big three, with Garnett, Pierce, and Allen. Um, okay, well, so that aside, what do the Cavs need to do going forward as we approach the trade deadline? You talked about needing a 3-and-D guy.
mm-hmm.
Um, who do we see out on the market there? Who are the sellers in this league? I would love it if the Wizards would be sellers. Yeah, and I don't know if the price would be right to get Kuzma, but he's a heck of a ball player. I don't know if Toronto's looking to tank. If anybody like Anunoby or
Yeah.
Siakam were available, that would be fantastic. So I really don't know who's got availability out there as you look at the uh, bottom of each conference. It seems like a move needs, what I would say is this. I think a move needs to be made. We need to add another piece because our bench is too weak.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree. I think right now, I mean, it hasn't really helped that we've had some injuries in kind of the second unit a bit, or some people just kind of coming off of injuries. And Kevin Love hasn't really shot well since he's hurt his thumb. So yeah, I mean, you do probably need to make a move, and like the question is, what do we have now that people will want? And then to your point, who's going to be selling? Like maybe Charlotte will be, they're not seemingly doing very well, which I love because those ticket prices are going down for when come to town in a month or so. But yeah, it's just it's an interesting situation just because we don't have a ton of assets. We have some people on our bench, and it's like, who are we willing to part with? Like with Okoro's turnaround, I don't really want to part with him because he can be a partial 3-and-D guy. Like he's been shooting the ball really, really well from three since like mid-December. So he has that potential, and he's obviously still young. We talked about he's just turning 22 today. But you do need someone else in that role, and I think we've kind of tried to make it Jetty, but you need someone who's a little bit more locked down and focused on the defensive end. So if there's someone out there that we can afford, then absolutely. And it's, who do we part with? Is it going to be Kevin Love? Are we going to lose the sentimental piece of it? And I don't know that we will. I know we've said, no trading Kevin. That's kind of how it goes this time of year. That rumor is always flying. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you talked about famous people's birthdays for the Cavs. First of all, that's just amazing coincidence to have two of our players with the same birthday. I
Yeah.
mean, a year apart, but nevertheless, that's just kind of a weird coinky dink there. Small world, small world. But you know what other person who is famous to Cleveland? Do you know who else has a birthday today?
I do not.
Bob Uecker, Harry Doyle, voice of the Cleveland Indians on Major League. We got 3 GD hits. That's all we got. And I mean, that guy, I love that dude. He even though he never played for Cleveland, he's as much a part of Cleveland history because of his role in that movie as
Yeah.
anybody. And
Yeah.
he's just a funny guy. I mean, his commercials back in the day, which were even when I was young for Krylon spray paint, were great. And he was a good actor in the TV show Mr. Belvedere. We enjoyed that since my dad's from England, you know. So having a British the butler and stuff was fantastic. We thoroughly enjoyed that. So speaking of let's keep it on the basketball topic here because you and I, I tweeted this earlier today. I saw this headline this morning, and it's something that just struck me, and it also apparently struck a fan. Steph Curry's mouthpiece. This is the third time he's been kicked from a game for throwing his mouthpiece. What's with this? What's with his attitude? Everyone looks up to him and they think he's this great, great dude. And maybe he is socially, but like, what kind of sportsmanship is that? I'm going to throw a temper tantrum. I got mad at my teammate. I got mad at a ref. I'm going to throw a temper tantrum. Like, what kind of an example is that setting? I mean, all those kids, did you see the outcry of people in Cleveland that came to see Steph Curry and didn't get to see him play. Boo hoo. Hey, here's an idea. Why don't you root for your hometown team and not some jabroni player from another city? Then you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting. Like people and kids nowadays, which I sound makes me sound really old, but nowadays kids really do focus in on the player because there's so much movement. I feel like in the league, and you follow your favorite player more than your favorite team in a lot of situations with kids now, which is disappointing. And hopefully, like it goes back to like team loyalty because I think there's a lot to be said for it. But yeah, I have never. I mean. I've never been a fan of Curry for like obvious reasons with the Warriors Cavs rivalry for the 4 years that we had it. But my thing with him is like kind of to your point, like everybody makes him out to be like this super humble person. And I'm like, he's like the least humble of all the players, which to be fair, like you need an ego to be that good. And like everybody has an ego when they're that good for the most part. Like Nick Chubb, maybe aside, we'll put him in his own little area because he seems to not have the ego. But like LeBron obviously carries an ego. Like you have to be that good. And yeah, I just like it's so fake to like he's not humble. He's very cocky. His shimmy that he does is cocky. I hate how he chews on his mouth guard during like I hate it. I just hate it so much. But yeah, I'm sure it's fueled by the rivalry. The reason that I hate him, or hates a short, I guess. The reason I dislike him as a player. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. And I was going to tell you, that's actually something that has me going nuclear. Guys and their mouthpieces. I watch Steph Curry constantly chewing on that stupid thing. Either you need it or you don't. Quit playing with it. Do you need a pacifier? Should we get you a passy? Maybe, maybe we should do that for you. And then Patrick Mahomes, too. Give me a break, dude. Like, it's not a chew toy. It's just not a chew toy, dude. Are you teething? Are you teething? We'll get you a patty. We'll ice it down. I had that with my kids, I mean, come on, man. That's ridiculous. It really, really drives me nuts to see these guys putzing around with their mouthpieces. Of course, it's the things that these guys do, too, with the disgusting things with the mouthpiece. I mean, and things they put in their mouth. Jake Delhomme with the licking the fingers. It's like, I mean, where have those hands been? How much dirt is on those? I guess it builds up the immune system or something along those lines.
Maybe.
But so yeah, the Steph Curry thing. And I was reading something that along the line, the Golden State Warriors, and I don't know that I'd want him on my team, but like, is it kind of crazy that 2 picks before Jordan Poole got picked, we picked Dylan Windler? That guy can't get on the court. He can't stay healthy.
I don't know when we're ever going to see him. Like he's permanently on the injured report, I guess. Can't get off it. I don't know when.
Yeah, I have a doubt. I kind of highly doubt we're ever going to see him again in uniform. He might make it back to the active roster at some point, but I don't know that he'll receive any playing time. I don't think he has a role in the rotation at this point in time or in the foreseeable future. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cavs do as they approach the All-Star break and come out with the trade deadline. And then, what was always interesting with LeBron here is how we were able to get guys to come to the team after they were waived. For example, like Deron Williams, to get him over here, a veteran, and I can't remember who else. Maybe it was Mike Miller or somebody along those lines that we were able to bring over to supplement the lineup at the end, toward the end of the season. But do you think that that Mitchell and the rest of the team around him offer enough to attract star veterans?
Yeah, I think in the future for sure. Generally, I feel like those guys are really just signing on for the remainder of the season. I don't know if they have enough to convince someone this season, unless there happens to be like a okay backup center and like maybe a decent 3 and that's not going to get a lot of time on some of the top tier teams, the top of the top, I guess. Just because I don't know that we would offer the best chance to win a championship this year. In the future, I think next year and maybe the year after, we should be there, I think, where we could get some of those guys.
Yeah, and one other thing, because this, yes, you keep seeing this in the headlines, the Lakers are struggling. LeBron is having career high numbers or
Yeah.
continuing, I mean, just playing out of his mind. And
Yeah.
and so my question is this: let's say we had an opportunity to make a trade to get LeBron back, but it was going to require giving up either Mobley or Allen. And let's say in this case, because we just signed Mitchell to a big contract, maybe Garland, and we signed him to be. So let's say it was Garland and one of the big guys and some other supplemental pieces to get LeBron.
Yeah,
What say you?
I'm not mortgaging the future for LeBron, as good as he probably will be for a handful of years. Like, we've done that before. I mean, I think our row is just much, much longer with the people we have on the roster currently. At most, I would send Kevin Love.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Little Kev, little Kev, right there. I love that guy. Love that guy. I mean, he and
Yeah.
that championship team with Channing Frye, Richard Jefferson. I mean, the camaraderie was fantastic, and I
Yeah.
just hope that JB can get the most out of these guys going down the stretch and can strategize the way you and I again talked about this. Ty Lue was able to do with the championship team. He came up with a defensive game plan. You know, the blitzing on the
Mhm.
pick and roll and the double teams. You just hope that we can come up with a strategy like that, and we will have to just wait and see how that all goes. Um, so moving on in the news around here, the Gardos. There was lots of interesting news going on for the Guardians this week. The I mean, I'll tell you what the lead story was up until yesterday. The lead story up until yesterday was who in the world stole Tito Francona's scooter out of
Yeah.
his building? I mean, what in the world? What does this world come to? The guy steals a dude's scooter. Really?
Yeah. That was disappointing. Must be a Yankees fan.
Must be that's crazy because he's got to have some kind of personalized license plate, as far as I know. But on a positive note, the police found the scooter and returned it to Tito, so he can safely make it to and from Progressive Field, which is
He
awesome.
was so happy. He was a joy when he saw that scooter again.
That's amazing. That is really amazing. As amazing as that was, last night was the Greater Cleveland Sports Awards, and it was hosted by Joe Thomas. And that guy is just a legend. And I'm hoping that in the next couple weeks, we're going to be talking about him being voted into the Hall of Fame for induction this summer because he deserves it.
Yeah.
And on the along the lines of the Guardians, the award for the Professional Athlete of the Year went to Jose Ramirez, and I gotta, I think that the other finalists may have been Jared Allen, and I'm not sure if it was Chubb or Garrett, but I think that Ramirez was very deserving of it. At least from an emotional standpoint, what he did to stay in Cleveland as opposed to
Yeah.
going out saying, I want to force my way out. I want a bigger contract, et cetera, et cetera. He signs an extension here. He's happy here. And that says a lot about him as a person. Could you see him being down the line? Maybe this is a bit premature. Could you see him staying with the Guardians long enough to have a statue at Progressive?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if the fans have anything to say about it, absolutely. In general, we love people that love the city. Anytime you get someone who's willing to stay, like we love Kevin Love, even though he's played pretty horribly because he chose to stay and he didn't have to. There's plenty of players like that on, all of the teams that have stayed. And we love them for it, and they can do no wrong in our eyes because they've respected the fact that the fans love the teams here and they're happy with where they are, and they're not doing what so many people do, which is like leave for the big city, the big lights, that kind of situation. So I think so he's got the talent to do it, so like from that perspective I'm not really worried. I hope they can get a World Series before he has to retire. If so, like I think you can put it in permanent marker, like it's inked in, like for sure. So hopefully, but I think just purely from a fan perspective, like I think they'll lobby pretty hard for him if he does stay.
Yeah, and I can also see Tito Francona getting a statue.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, as far as I recall, he is the winningest manager in Indians Guardians history. That's pretty impressive. I mean, he has had a long run of success here in Cleveland, and that's fantastic. From what I've heard about, I think from Andre Knott or other guy, the show on ESPN Cleveland talking about him, he seems
Mhm.
like he's doing better health wise, and
That's good.
that's fantastic. Also, an award went to the Guardians for the best moment in Cleveland sports for their run, for their American League Central championship, for their playoff run. Um,
Yeah.
just an amazing season for the Guardians. And I think we're 70 some days away from opening day. That's fantastic, even though that first month of the season, you worry about snow out here in Cleveland.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a tough draw, but I think that if you win, you bring people in. Um, so we got that on deck. No pun intended. We got the Guardians on deck. We'll be looking for them. Um, News around the NFL and the Browns here, and I want to just generally go um, to the talking about the move. First of all, in the NFL, the move in Carolina, they hired Frank Reich to be the
Yeah.
next head coach there. He was fired mid-season by the Colts. And so my question is, what's the vibe? If you've had an opportunity to listen to any sports radio or anything of that nature, what's the vibe down there?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting hire because like the players loved Steve Wilkes so much, and like they were lobbying really hard to have him stay on as the head coach after the season. I think fans are kind of just like, okay, like it's a swing in the total opposite direction from what they had. Obviously, going with an unproven college coach did not at all pan out, and they gave him a huge contract for absolutely no reason. And so it is a swing in a safer direction, I guess, is kind of how they're looking at it. And you're getting an offensive mind, I guess, more than the defensive mind of Steve Wilkes. So that's kind of, I think, where they're approaching it, is like, it's like, it's okay. I don't think it's gonna, I make like a lot of noise. It's just like the kind of comfortable, safe pick, and we'll see how it pans out. I think their attention's on the draft and what quarterback they can get, or maybe in free agency. I mean, there's going to be some options. It sounds like, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it does sound like that, and I don't want to go. There's the obvious underlying story throughout the NFL and the media. There's a little bit of outcry talking about like, well, the racial diversity,
Mhm.
Steve Wilkes, et cetera. I mean, he led them. They played pretty well under him
Yeah.
to close out the season. I mean, it's the same team that was stinking under Rule. Wilkes
Yeah.
comes in and they're playing hard for him after they got rid of Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty impressive what they did under him. Um, I don't know. It's going to be questionable because what has Frank Reich really done? He had a good season as offensive coordinator in Philadelphia the year they won the Super Bowl. So he did well with Carson Wentz. Maybe they're looking at it saying, look, if he can develop a young quarterback, that's the way to go. I started thinking about, we're talking about Carolina and the draft, and you mentioned a quarterback. And I started thinking about, the Greater Cleveland Awards and the fact that, and the NFL awards, uh, where Myles Garrett was not a finalist for the Defensive Player of the Year. I
Yeah.
believe you have Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, and oh, geez, is it Chandler Jones of the Chiefs?
From, yeah, from Kansas City.
And obviously Myles Garrett has been impressive. And I started thinking about it and going, okay, if I had to do it over again, or I had the top pick in the draft, um, unless I had an established quarterback already, shouldn't I go after a quarterback, even if this defensive player is going to be monumental? I mean, he doesn't touch the ball every play. The quarterback does. But
Yeah.
I look back at that draft class, And I'm like, yeah, that was a weak draft class. I take that. I take that back. At the very top, I'm kind of surprised. Me, we could have had Watson at one. We theoretically, if we had known what Reed could do with Mahomes, now I don't know that it would have been the same here. We could have had
Yeah.
Mahomes. Um, but instead, we end up with Deshaun Kaiser in the second round. That
Yeah.
didn't work out so well. And obviously, we had our opportunity the next season. I mean, Hugh Jackson would say, "Look, the team was tanking anyway to get the top pick the next season as well," and they sure enough did that. Unfortunately, things didn't work out with Mayfield. So then I went back a little bit further, to look at the first round from when we drafted Joe Thomas, a potential Hall of Famer.
Hmm.
And I looked at that draft, and I'm like, he wasn't the topic. We were number 3 that year. The people that went ahead of him, Jamarcus Russell to the
Mm,
Raiders, bust.
yeah.
Calvin Johnson, Hall of Famer. Then Joe Thomas, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Adrian Peterson, barring issues with personal issues and things like that
Yeah.
off the field, theoretically, he should make the Hall of Fame as well. And he was at 7. But I looked at the names of the other guys that got drafted after Joe Thomas and the quarterbacks that got drafted in that class, and it was a weak quarterback class. And the Browns were headed into that season with Charlie Fry,
Yeah.
Charlie freaking Fry as our starter. And after basically the first half of the first game, they sent him packing. And Derek Anderson had his one and only good season ever that year, and we missed
Yeah.
out on the playoffs that year. So I guess when I look at it and you think about the other teams with top picks coming up this year, and if the Browns are in that position in the foreseeable future, let's say Watson, for whatever reason, either he doesn't work out or he's gone or whatever it is. If we get back at the number 1 position, I think you've got to swing for the fences and go for the best quarterback available. I know it might set you back, but if you hit on it, you're headed in the right direction. Is my thought.
Yeah, it's I feel like quarterback is, I mean, I don't want to say the highest. I think because of the position and by the nature of the position, it's like the most obvious boomer bust situation. So like it's very clear when, with the exception of like Daniel Jones, who rides that line between boom and bust maybe. But for the most part, it's very clear, who's good and who's not good once they get into the league. But going in, it's hard to get that the evaluation and feel super confident. Like there are guys that people think are like absolute certainties, gonna be great in the league, and then obviously don't do much of anything, and so it's hard to know. It's almost like you have to have the right, and maybe we're proof of that. Like you have to have the right system and the right coaches and stuff around him for him to be successful. Because I think we've had talent. Like I don't think we're drafting not talented quarterbacks, in our laundry list of quarterbacks. It's just we haven't been able to do anything of it because we haven't had the right people around them. And like to your point, like if we draft Mahomes, does he turn out the same? And I think the answer is no. I don't think he does. And part of that is because we haven't necessarily had the right people around. I would feel pretty confident, I think, with what Kevin's done with some quarterbacks that we weren't. Like he made Baker look much better than he's looked anywhere else since he's moved on. And he did a good job with Jacoby. Obviously, the Watson portion of the season left a lot to be desired, and like we'll see what happens next year. But I would feel better drafting a rookie with him, I think, than I would anyone else we've had coaching in the past. So, maybe that plays a role.
Yeah, absolutely. My question is always about the talent evaluation. It just seems like we've had such personalities in that building at the GM and at the coach level that they haven't been able to come up with, or when they do come to a consensus. I don't know. It's just questionable. It goes to that whole thing of um, what their data points are, what their analysis is
Yeah.
of the players. Um, I heard there was a meeting this morning that Stefanski had with the beat reporters. and went over film and talked
Huh.
about certain plays. And one of the plays that came up and was discussed, Grossi was talking about this, was the play in Washington where the Browns took the points off the scoreboard and
Mhm.
decided to go for it on 4th and 3. And to Stefanski's point, he felt, hey, if we do this, it's guaranteed to work. It's gonna work. It's a touchdown. Um, but someone went the wrong direction, and it didn't work.
Uh,
And and so I would love to hear more about that and what he had to say. I really, really not. I mean, offensively, I've got some questions about some plays, some things, and he talked about the difference in Deshaun Watson and what the offensive line is going to have to do
right.
compared to guys like Jacoby Brissett, and,
Yeah.
and even Mayfield for that matter. Um, because he does get sacked quite often. He kind of runs into that, but he keeps the play alive. Um, whereas other guys can't do that, and his athletic ability allows him to do that. And he doesn't want to go down, and that to his detriment. Sometimes, but it means that the offensive linemen have to adjust and adapt to his playing style. And I think having a full off season of that will be helpful. I hope
Yeah.
that Stefanski backs off of his routine of not playing guys in the preseason. I understand that you risk injury, uh, but at the same time, I think you got to go into the season in rhythm. And instead of playing the first 2 games looking terrible, why not go in with a little continuity? Guys acting like they played together before. So as we look at, obviously the playoffs are continuing here, and we got the AFC NFC Championship this weekend,
Mhm.
and then we're going to be talking free agency, the draft combine, the draft, etc. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this: your opinion on this. We don't have a pick till the second round. Let's say day 2 comes around, and on the board, we said our top needs were, let's just say, defensive tackle, linebacker, and wide receiver. Let's just
Mhm.
say, for argument's sake, those are the top 3 positions on our board. And lo and behold, there the guys we have graded highest at each of those positions is still available. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
highly hypothetical situation, but
Yeah.
what would you take? Which position would you want to draft and would have the most impact on the Browns season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I personally think I probably would want to go wide receiver, just to get some, like, for lack of a better word, cheaper talent in the room. And it is a little bit dicey because you have some guys, in that room that are younger, that you're still kind of maybe hoping can develop, some people that were drafted last year. So like maybe there's not enough room, but like at the same time you can get better. Like someone's gonna play over Schwartz, they're gonna play over Schwartz, right? Like we just have to cut ties, and like that's been one of the big concerns I think with this current front office group is like not it's hanging on to guys that you drafted because you drafted them. And so like if they're willing to part with that, then I would like to go with some speed and talent at wide receiver. I feel okay where we are at linebacker, and I feel like you're going to be able to maybe attract some defensive line help in free agency more so than maybe, we would otherwise based off of our hire, because he tends to get sack numbers super high in his defenses. So like that's something that'll be enticing to maybe some veterans. And just with how poor the the interior line play was, I feel better about a veteran, I think, on that side of the ball.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I can see your argument there. I was thinking, honestly, my thought is I would want to get if I saw like top talent at the D tackle position, and granted, free agency, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, starts before the draft because we had Watson last
Yeah.
year. before the draft. So theoretically, we can make a trade, we could get somebody before then, and we'll have a better idea of what our
Mhm.
needs are going into the draft. Um, but I could see arguments for both. I think that if you have a dominant defense, where you can stop the run on a consistent basis and you can get an effective pass rush, you're going to be, up the middle. That's going to help your D backs, and it's
Yep.
also going to help your other rushers, your edge rushers like Miles Garrett and whoever we get, presumably to play on the other edge. So I
Right.
can see the point about the receiver. I mean, if I'll tell you what, I don't. I know that Jake Trotter smacked this down. Someone who posted it, I think it was Nick Nick Paulus from ESPN Cleveland was posting. Man, if Jackson Smith and Jigba ended up available, I'd take him. In a heartbeat,
Oh,
basically.
yeah.
And Trotter was like, "That's not going to happen." I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
going to
I mean, he
depend.
hasn't really played. Yeah. He hasn't
It's going
played.
to
So
depend.
maybe.
It's going to depend what he does in the combine, how fast he runs the 40, and whether the doctors look at him and say, "Yeah, he's going to be an injury risk with these soft tissue injuries and so on and so forth." And I think teams might shy away from him. But as far as I know, he doesn't have any personal problems. He's not on camera like Laramie Tunsil. He's
Yeah.
not pulling a Tyreek Hill and punching his pregnant girlfriend in the stomach. We don't have those issues as far as we know on Jackson Smith and Jigba, but just based upon the wide receivers that have come out of Ohio State recently and the
Hmm.
production they have had, going to Michael Thomas and these are in recent years, basically under Hartline. I think Thomas or Hartline was there under Michael Thomas and Olave and Wilson. I mean, they've just been fantastic, and the guys they've got coming up are fantastic
Yeah.
as well. So it will be very interesting to see how all of these things play out. So, lots is going on here. Taking a look here, and I'd be curious for all of our listeners if you're not tuning into the Cavs game. It looks like we're up 94-66 toward the end of the third. So hey, I'll take it. That appears to be on our way to a win. Now, here's my question: Is are the guys on ESPN Cleveland going to hit their Cavs parlay because they bet two legs on Jared Allen, and they've had some problems with Allen. It started with him being sick the one night and
Oh,
leaving the
yeah.
game, and then the other night he was like one rebound away going into the fourth quarter and didn't get a stinking rebound. So I don't know. We shall see on that. Something we touched on, earlier, in a previous episode and just switching back for a moment here to the Cavs, was the last 2 minute report. That
Oh,
ending in New York, the fact that they come out and then they say, "Oh yeah, well, oops, we missed a
yeah.
couple calls, and we've had some go in our favor." Is it one of those things that it's doing more harm than good?
Yeah, I think that was proven when we took like 25 minutes to review whether a shot hit the rim that went out of bounds. Anyways, it was like, okay, like I get it. You don't want to be wrong on the last 2 minute, and then you end up being wrong on the last 2 minute report. So like, what was the point? Like
Right.
that was just like I don't think they don't review that if they're like I don't know what the concern would have been or why they were looking at it if not to avoid it showing up on the last 2 minute report. So like if we're doing stuff like that, we're worried too much about the last 2 minute report and like
Right.
don't put it out then because it's in their head. So I don't know. It's fine, but it is like a day late and a dollar short, so it doesn't help anybody.
Right. And how much of it would you attribute to all of the availability of gambling in this country, all over the country, online and such? How much of that do you think is a factor in it? Because you've got people who have got money on the line,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to come out and say the refs screwed the pooch on this. I mean, are we going to have another Tim Donaghy situation like when the Spurs played the Suns in the
Yeah.
playoffs? It's potentially problematic with all of the sports gambling that is going on. Um, and it's a bit worrisome. In my opinion, I don't know how you solve for that, or how you ease. So, for me, I don't know how to ease my fears that there's some screw jobs going on.
Yeah, I guess maybe the logical path is, AI is becoming big. Maybe we'll just have artificial intelligence referee the game from
I
now
know
on.
you're a big fan of that. I do know you are a big fan of that. Well, I mean, honestly, let me say this. I will say that I wonder in football, there is question sometimes about where to place the ball. Are you
Yeah, it's
telling me that we
random.
can't or don't? Because I'm pretty sure they put a chip in the ball because they can track velocity, and they track all these things on AWS. And
Yeah.
I'm like, you mean to tell me you can't do that so that we know if the ball crossed the plane of the goal, if they reach the first down marker? I mean, I think that there's, and maybe it's just a matter of time. So with that, I just want to throw in this. Last week we had a discussion about condiments, and we talked about ketchup, yay or nay on
Mhm.
ketchup and different foods. So this week I struggled with this. I was really thinking about it hard, but I thought, something else that is a condiment that has its place in certain dishes, depending upon where you are, is mustard. So let me ask you this. I've got three dishes here, and we're going to talk about mustard and its place on in these dishes. All right, mustard in egg salad, yay or oy vey?
Oh, I'm an oy vey. I don't like egg salad on its own, and definitely not with mustard. So I'll go oy vey.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go oy vey on this all the way. It's got to be mayonnaise. It's got to be, to me, it's mayonnaise. And I don't know about you, but, according to my wife, and it must be Duke's as well. It must be Duke's. And I had never heard of Duke's until I moved down to Virginia.
Yeah, all my yay or oy veys on mayo would be oy vey. I do not like mayo.
Not a
Not my
fan,
thing.
not a
Not a
fan
fan.
of mayo. Not a fan of mayo. Okay. Well, then this might all be oy veys then, but I'm going to go with mustard. Would you put mustard in potato salad? Does it belong?
I have not. So I don't know, I guess.
You're
You
going to have to
don't
come
knock
up.
until you try it, I guess. You don't knock until you try it. I haven't tried it. So I'm in the or, I guess.
The,
Right in the
the, the,
middle.
ei- the either or there. Yeah, I can see how that goes. I can see how that goes. And I am, again, I'm strongly an oy vey on that. I got to be honest. The only thing I really like mustard on is on my hot dog, a corned beef sandwich, or a burger. And other than that, I'm not really a fan of it. Um, so the last one would be macaroni salad because again, you see so many
Mhm.
varieties, and I don't know if you had macaroni salad with mustard in it, and if so, where do you fall on that? Uh,
Yeah, I have not. I haven't had that on that either. I have though had mustard on salmon, which was actually really good. I would not have thought it was a nice like mustard glaze. It was good.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm going to be
Yeah.
an oy vey on the mustard in the macaroni salad. Although I could see that as being the one that's most likely to be good,
Yeah.
to be where mustard would be a good complement to it. And you brought up salmon, and for those of you out there, and I know, and this we laugh about this all the time. On Food Network, there's a chef Scott Conan, and
Mhm.
this guy swears you cannot have cheese with fish. However,
Interesting.
this is something that my in-laws discovered and introduced us to as a dish they had at their golf club in the dining room. It was salmon with goat cheese. Amazing. Just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's one of those things like I really don't get these food critics who are so set in their ways that they're like, no, there's an absolute rule to this or that. I think that there's maybe I'm wishy-washy, or am I just not opinionated enough? I don't know which one it is, to be honest, but I feel like there's a middle ground when it comes to these things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The whole, well, what do you have with which foods do you eat with red wine versus which foods you eat with white wine, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
All
The answer
very
is all foods with all kinds of wine.
There you go. There you go. Now I am not a red wine fan. To be honest, it's a little bit. Most of it, most is a little bit too of the good red wine is a bit too bitter for me.
Yeah.
Whereas the white wine, I like the sweeter wines. And I don't know about at Randolph Macon, but I took a class. It was really vineyards and wineries of Northeast Ohio, uh, commonly known as wine tasting. A
Mm-hmm.
2 credit hour course my senior year. I had to go to 3 Saturday sessions, all day long sessions. Man, we had some good times. I don't know if you've ever been to Put in Bay in Ohio, but that it was amazing up there going to Margaritaville and just fantastic time. So I'm all about the winery, all about the wineries.
Yeah.
So as we progress through our show here, first of all, before we get to what has us going nuclear, want to thank all the listeners here. Again, we're presented by Buzz Sports CLE. And if you're watching, please share with your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next week, next Thursday, the plan we have lined up former Kent State Golden Flash men's basketball player Trevor Huffman, who was part of the team that went to the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament and went on to play for many years in Europe. He's back in Michigan now, and so we'll be looking to talk to him about what he's got going on professionally, and get some memories from him about his time at Kent State, his run there to the Elite Eight, that team, and the coaches, etc. It'll be a great interview, so please tune into that. Next week we'll be on at 9 o'clock. So at this point, Madison, what has you going nuclear today?
I have a couple things. First being American Airlines. I had a flight booked for this weekend that got ruined by COVID, which is not my COVID, but so for that reason, you get no money back. This is the first time I have ever bought insurance plane ticket because I was worried about the snow because it's up in New York, upstate New York. And I'm like, okay, well, if it's, gets snows out, I want to, be able to get my money back. And they did get like 14 inches of snow, but that obviously is not going to impact this weekend. So I was trying to reschedule because they're bumping the baby shower I was going to. Could not reschedule. It's the same price as this weekend, same price. But because I bought the economy or whatever ticket level, the lower one, every other one has an option to change flights. And I feel like of all the people that should have that option, it's the people that are buying the economy because they don't have spare money to lose on a flight that they can no longer make. So that is one. And then number two is just not really anything impactful to the Browns necessarily, but the Bengals giving free bulletin board material is I hate when teams do that. Why are we calling it, Burrowhead Stadium? That's just dumb. And it makes me feel like you're going to go get blown out in Kansas City. So just don't offer up bulletin board material. Just keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything. And, everybody does it. Even the Chiefs kind of fired back a bit, I think, but just don't give any other reason for a team to come in a little extra motivated. Why, once we make the playoffs, I just hope we don't do that when we make the playoffs.
Good point. I wholeheartedly, completely agree with your assessment there. And, it goes back to that whole, the Browns is the Browns thing, and
Yep.
fired up the Browns going into Pittsburgh and coming away with that wild card win. And you'll take it however you can get it, but I want to kind of jump on one thing that has me going nuclear. And it relates to Joe Burrow. That guy, in my opinion, has a punchable face. He's pompous. Okay. As much as you talk about Steph Curry, this guy walking around with a freaking stogie in his mouth, he looks like a baby. It doesn't make you look cool. He's the young guy who's walking around holding a beer because he thinks it makes him look cool. And I'm like, dude, just go and play the game. This nonsense with the lavish coats and outfits and the cigar. Just go do something. Okay. Win a few Super Bowls. All right. Go talk to Tom Brady, win a few Super Bowls, and then you can have the right to be a complete douche canoe. Okay. But for now, shut up. Okay, you lost last year. Um, you haven't won anything yet. So I think you need to know your role and shut your mouth, as The Rock would say. And you know, also along those lines of the flair that goes into sport, something else that has me going nuclear is the elaborate handshakes and gyrations and things that are done, touchdown celebrations, shimmies like Steph Curry. Can you be more like Nick Chubb? Can you be more like Amari Cooper? That's your job. Do I get up every time I write a letter and start, doing a celebration dance? Maybe I'm just old. And I will share a moment about the how I'm feeling old these days. Uh, but come on, enough. Like, if you spent as much time practicing your craft as you did working on these handshakes and whatnot, maybe you'd be a little bit better for it. I watch, um, the college basketball. I watch these people when they get their names announced in the starting lineup. They come down the line, and then someone's doing. I swear, there's one where it looks like they're doing a pat down, and I'm going.
Yeah, that's a thing.
So this person's a criminal? I mean, that's what I see out of it. I don't know. Um, so along those lines, talking about being old, and I want to leave on this note here. So last night, I'm up doing my side gig, doing my broadcasting for Randolph Macon, and there were a couple of one student and someone who is the wife of one of the co assistant SID. She's in grad school, whatever. She did go to Randolph Macon. But the coach for Shenandoah University goes crazy on the official after something. It was a weird bounce. I can't tell you exactly what happened. I didn't see the replay, on the video that we have upstairs. I don't know exactly how it happened, but the ball bounced funny. So the coach there is going crazy, and the play is stopped. And while this is going on, I hear someone from the very small group of 4 or 5 people that currently is the pep band, but I hear him playing Rage Against the Machine, Bulls on Parade. And I said, "Oh, that's hilarious. It's Rage Against the Machine. She's kind of raging out there." They're like, "Who?" And at that moment, I felt very, very old. And that was, yeah, that was about enough for me. So on that note, feeling old, kids, I'm gonna kill them kids with their germs. They're killing me here. Folks, want to thank you all for tuning in. Madison, thank you so much. Great insight today. Again, we have been going nuclear, full-blown coverage of the land. We were presented by Buzz Sports CLE. I want to thank Craig Fountain. I am at egreen4325. Madison is on Twitter at madtravels24. The show is on Twitter at Going Nuclear CLE. Again, please tune in, subscribe, let your friends know. We've got a great show. Next week is going to be fantastic with Trevor Huffman. Looking forward to hearing some of his stories, talking about what he's got going on these days. And we will break down whatever else is going on in the land. So for Madison Delaney, I'm Ethan Greenberg, and you've been watching Going Nuclear, full-blown coverage of the land.